Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 28th, 2020 Dudley Planning Board meeting. It's 7 p.m. Present tonight, we have Bill LePage, a member, Steve Petroba, clerk of the board, Richard Clark, vice chairman, myself, Daniel Edmiston, chairman, Bill Scanlon, our town planner, and Michelle is here as well, our acting clerk. Good evening. First order of business. Approval of the meeting minutes, October 14th, 2020. Any comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, item number 4 in the minutes, down to the bottom of the paragraph, there's a sentence that begins, the default is 2 or more lots. And my recollection of how that discussion went, that one line in the minutes doesn't properly reflect the discussion. So I would make a motion that we would strike the following verbiage. The default is 2 or more lots, but. By striking that, the sentence could start as, he, being Mr. Scanlon, will check to see what other towns have in this regard. So if there's no opposition to that, that's my only comment.
Any questions, board? Any comments? What do you guys think to Steve's proposal?
No objection.
No objection? All right, is there any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the minutes as amended.
All right, I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Do I have a second? And a second. All those in favor? Aye. All right, unanimous. Thank you. We do not have any A&R plans tonight.
Dan, do you want to, want me to put out the minutes again for signature at the next meeting, or do you want to sign the minutes tonight and strike out that
We're
line?
meeting next week, right?
No.
We only have one meeting in November, right?
In 3 weeks from tonight,
November
18th.
Okay. I'm okay with waiting. You guys okay?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
okay.
Okay?
As long as it doesn't impede you in any way, Bill, we're good.
No, it's fine.
All right. Item 2, A&R plans. We don't have any tonight. Standard business is discussion status report on finishing construction of and acceptance of unaccepted subdivision streets. Any updates?
On the Prupon Estates lot release form that you approved at the last meeting, the attorney for the development noted that the lot numbering had changed from lot 6 and 42 to lots 6R and 42R. So he was unable to record that lot release. So I would ask you to re-sign this new form with the correct lot numbers indicated here so that Mr. Sakara can record this at the Registry of Deeds.
And when were those lot names changed or designations changed?
There was a plan revision, I'm not sure when, several years ago,
Okay.
but it didn't affect these 2 lots, I don't believe.
We need 2 copies of that?
Just one copy?
No, just one copy. Michelle can notarize it and then give it to the developer.
I was not at that meeting.
Right, so you should probably not sign.
How about the other
You
subdivisions?
signed it already. Nothing new on Rocky Hill Estates or Piastre Road. On Country View Estates, Eisenhower Drive, I have in tab D,
Tab C.
tab C, thank you. I have a letter to be mailed to the developer, Mr. Daniel Haney. We've been in contact with him over the last several months to regards to using the money in escrow to make repairs to the sewer pump station. And we've been working closely with him for quite a while, but recently he's not been responding to my calls or emails, and we still need to go forward with the project. So I've drafted this letter telling him that we're going to do the work. in the station. We'd like his cooperation as he has in the past, but if he doesn't, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway, because there is an urgency to the matter. If the sewer pumps were to fail, it would create a public health emergency. So I think I've been reporting on this issue for several months, and the water and sewer superintendent is getting very concerned that the longer we wait, the higher the risk for failure. So he'd like to get this work done as soon as possible. So I'd like you to review that letter, and if you approve it, I would sign it and mail it out to Mr. Haney, and so we can begin the work. I've also given him the opportunity to contact us if he has any issues or concerns, and we can work with him on that to address whatever issues he might have, and then get started on the work.
The deadline given him is next Friday, correct?
Excuse me?
The deadline we've given him is next
Yes.
Friday, which seems reasonable.
Yeah, it's
Mr.
been
Chairman, if I
going,
may, a question, Bill, are we sending this certified mail, return receipt requested, and somehow getting some assurance that it at least is delivered to the address indicated?
We could do at least, sure.
Right. And again, it's very distressing to see that, we've mentioned, I don't know how many times over, the unsuccessful attempts in recent weeks, and I know there had been a short period of time when he seemed to be somewhat compliant or at least available. Now it looks like he's gone to ground again, and I don't know where that leaves us other than holding the bag at some point down the road, I suspect. But I do thank you and appreciate your effort in trying to keep the lines of communication open.
Great.
Should we get a motion to approve the letter, or?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we approve the letter as presented by the town planner.
I have a motion.
second,
I have a motion and a second to approve the letter and give our town planner authorization to send it out. All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Anything Tobin or Lyons? Just reports from Lyons, didn't we?
Nothing on Tobin. I've been trying to get in touch with the developer regarding the street acceptance, but he hasn't been returning my calls. On Lyons Estates,
Excuse me, Bill.
yes,
Could you repeat what that was you just said?
sure, on Tobin Farms, I've
Yeah.
been reaching out to the developer. He had indicated he wanted to bring these streets forward to town meeting for acceptance,
Okay.
and I've sent him numerous text messages, and he hasn't returned my efforts to contact him.
Okay.
So I don't have anything new to report
All right, thank
at
you.
this point. Okay. So for Lyons Estates, we have a number of site visit reports from Graves Engineering for your review and comment. Graves has been doing an excellent job overseeing this project and making sure that everything is built according to spec. If you have any questions or comments on those reports, we can talk about it, and I can get back to Graves if there's any issues that I can't answer.
So, I read the site report where they talked about the screen material, but as I read it, it also basically says that they don't, if I read it correctly, the engineer says that they shouldn't use that screen material in there. That they tested the material and determined what it was, or its makeup. But he also believes that at this point, it would do more harm than good to have them remove the material they've put in to date. So that at this point, what they put down should stay. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the way I read that letter, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we talking about that more of this has to be done down the road, and that we're basically saying that don't use any more of that material? That now they're going to have to change material, or is that section pretty much, is that all done?
Well, I believe, I'm not sure if they've completed all the drainage work, but yes, if there's any more pipe that needs to go in, then it should meet the standard that we've set. That report contains a sieve analysis that was, native material was screened and sent to this company for analysis, and it did not meet the spec that was called for.
Is there really any way that the contractor could have known that before he put it down? I mean, it seems very, I don't understand it because it's very technical.
Right.
So I'm just, from a layman's point of view, is this something that you could look at and say, oh, that's not the right material? Or is it
It did go
more
out
the
to
case
a,
of, it should be okay, he did it, and then found out later it wasn't?
you know, I'm not sure when the material was actually installed, but there is a report from Yankee Engineering and Testing. This material was sent out to that company for analysis, and you can see the,
But that testing was done after the material was already installed, correct? The material was installed, our engineer went out, looked at it, and said, hey, that doesn't look right, we should test it. They tested it, it came back, and he said, hey, you know, it turns out it's not the right stuff.
well, I think the engineer looked at this report, because I don't think you can tell by looking at it, you know, whether it would meet the standard.
Okay, I guess that answers my question. My
okay.
concern was, this doesn't appear to be a situation where the contractor blatantly put the wrong material down. This is more of a case of contractor had an honest reason to believe that this material was suitable?
I would say so, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they did a bunch of soil tests in the area, and there might have been 5, there might have been 10, I don't know. But I'm just guessing they did that, but there's no way you can catch everything.
Right.
They could have been 20 feet away from it, they could have been 200 feet away from it. These are just the surprises you sometimes get. My understanding that was native soil, so it was there on site.
Yes,
They just
and
simply didn't
screened
find it.
somehow.
So native screened means that they basically brought a screening plant in, dug up this dirt from that location,
Mhm.
screened it right there on site, and put it back in the ground.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There was also an issue with some site runoff that was taken
Yeah,
care
the
of.
Dams.
They put down some wood chip mulch to control that problem. The conservation agent was also aware of that issue and had suggested that method, so he was pleased that that was taken care of very quickly.
Yeah, we went from a drought to rain every other day lately, so.
Any other questions or comments about the reports for Lions Estates? All right, okay to move on to item number 2, inspections and actions associated with site plans?
Haven't been any.
None, all righty.
The,
Next item,
just-
continue review of subdivision rules and regulations.
Just to back up for a second.
Yep.
JD&D has submitted their building permit plans to the building commissioner, and they have revised the site plan because they reduced the building size in order to not have to sprinkler the building.
Mhm.
So that came up during the pre-construction conference and was authorized. So I'm assuming that they will begin work on that site within the next week or two, once they get the building permit and can get the notice to proceed.
Okay. Under which tab are the subdivision rules and regulations that we're gonna review?
Tab D has the next section of revisions, and tab E has the analysis of what other towns require for the development impact statement. So, do you want to start with the development impact statement, since that was carried over from the last meeting?
Mhm.
So on tab E then, we had this discussion last meeting, what would be the threshold number to require that subdividers prepare a development impact statement. Currently, there is no threshold, so that means that any subdivision would have to complete that document. And I had suggested that perhaps there should be a minimum number of lots that would trigger that number because of the cost of preparing such a study. So in order to help the board make that decision, you asked me to prepare a list of what other towns required, and I have done that. There's about maybe 15 or so communities here that have a similar kind of document. They may call it something else, but it sort of serves the same purpose.
Mhm.
And I think the most common threshold is that there is no threshold, similar to what Dudley has. Those that do require a minimum number set it pretty low, like 5 to 6 lots, although a couple have, well, one has 20, and a couple have 20, and one has 25. So you can see there is kind of a range here of what other towns require. I think my thought was that for a small subdivision, there's likely to be, little environmental impact, so why make a developer go through that process? But again, as the town develops, even a small number of lots can have some impact, so it's really your call in terms of what you think would be appropriate for Dudley. And so I just prepared this for your information. If you have any comments or questions, let me know.
So, Bill, we talked about this last week, or last meeting, and we had a different opinion. There was opinion that we should ask for an impact study for as little as 2 lots. The idea being that it would be something that could be waived, but that would give us latitude depending on the site, depending on the difficulties or the location, et cetera, et cetera. There's another point of view that I think the threshold was 30, guys? Was that what we said?
No, well, Dan, not to muddy the waters, but I think I threw 30 out because I had asked the question about, well, what's the largest subdivision that we've dealt with in the last 10
Yep.
years? And I believe that Pierpont was the one that was mentioned. And I think we figured that there was like 60 lots there. So I cut that in half. In retrospect, now that I see what the other towns are doing,
Yep.
I still feel that, like what Bill was saying, that we should put a number on it that would would create a situation where not every developer would have to ask for a waiver, which is the current situation. The current situation is, because there's no threshold, that no matter what size subdivision comes before the planning board, they're required to do this unless they get a waiver. So I think the number should be that we should put a number on it, but I think the number should be low, more in the order of 5 or 6, which is what the majority of these other towns are doing. It's interesting to me, just as a side comment, I don't know why Auburn would think 20, because, Bill, you just brought up the point that as the town grows, that it might be more significant when, even a small subdivision might be significant. So I'm kind of surprised that number's that high. I'm now of the mindset 5 or 6. I still don't like 2 because I just don't see who would even come forward with a definitive subdivision plan for a 2-lot subdivision. Because again, the cost of building a road, because we're not talking about an A&R. Mason Road that came up a few weeks ago, that was an A&R. That was, what was that, 4 lots. It was an A&R, so it doesn't even fall into this rule. But an actual subdivision, we'd have to be talking about, they'd be putting in a road, and I don't see how anybody's gonna come before us and ask for a 2-lot subdivision, because, again, it's so expensive to build a road now. But I could see a 5-lot subdivision or a 6-lot, like JB, that just came before us, so.
Yeah, so I don't recall in the conversation about JB that there was any mention of a waiver request for impact study.
We didn't get that far, I don't think.
No, they had a list of waivers in the
They did have a
letter,
list of
right,
waivers,
that
I
the
don't think
board-
they listed it,
Listed it?
just
Was it listed on
impact, environmental, the impact statement, development impact statement.
I don't think
wasn't
they did.
waived there.
Yeah, I don't think they asked for a waiver on that.
I think there were a list of 5 or 6 waivers that they asked for, and I don't recall that as being one.
Right.
That's interesting, somehow that fell through the cracks.
Well, it hasn't been approved, so we still have time, but yeah, for some reason, they didn't interpret their needing to ask for that waiver. They didn't interpret it as a requirement for what they're planning on doing.
Well, they didn't interpret it as an impediment to what they were doing, I suspect.
I think their waivers were specific to the road construction requirements. They could still come back and ask for a waiver from that when they filed their definitive plan. But he wanted, advice in terms of how to proceed with designing the road system.
Well, from what I
I
understand.
see what you're saying, because we haven't reached the definitive plan stage yet, that might be why we're not seeing that waiver
Yes.
request yet.
Yes.
Yeah, he was trying to get a grip on,
Right.
I do think,
road
if I may, Mr. Chairman, I do think
drainage.
that there might be some redundancy in that this development impact statement to some extent relates to the environment. And as I understand it, the Conservation Commission is involved, the Board of Health is involved, so there are other groups, if you will, or other organizations within town government that are taking a look at these issues as well as us. So to some extent, I can interpret that as being somewhat redundant in that we're asking for something that may already have been taken care of or addressed at another board or another commission. So I am not in opposition to Mr. Wetruba's thought. I can see 5 as a reasonable number. I would move perhaps more in favor of what I see as indicated for Sturbridge, 5 or more units in any industrial or commercial subdivision.
Bill, any thoughts on the matter? Number-wise, or?
Yeah, I agree with Steve on the 5 or 6 range. Yeah, I don't see how these other towns have such a high number on some of these.
So do we want to include commercial and industrial subdivisions in the language?
I don't object to Mr. Clark's suggestion of including that language. My only question is where this change that we're making in the subdivision regs is, Bill, is that not in a section that actually covers commercial and industrial?
Well, it doesn't make any difference if it's a subdivision, it still comes before the board.
But I thought where this language was that we were changing, I thought it was specifically in the section regarding residential subdivisions.
Well, we don't make a distinction, I don't believe,
Yeah, I
in
think-
our rules and regulations between commercial, industrial, and residential. We have them all in one big collection of subdivisions, period.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
then absolutely, sure.
Okay.
I could see adding that language. What do you think, Dan?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, because, I mean, a lot of the bylaws are really vague, and I think adding the verbiage is a great idea, because there's no question.
And the way it's written for Sturbridge, it says 5 or more units and any commercial or industrial subdivision. So does that mean if it's a commercial subdivision of even just 2 parcels? Right, okay.
Right.
Well, it could be, in a commercial environment, 2 parcels could be
No, I'm saying that's good.
several 100,000 square feet. I
That's
mean,
good. I like the way it's worded, and that, I just wanted to make sure that that's what they meant. If that's what they meant, then I would say exactly the way it's written there.
So you guys want to just take over that verbiage with the 5? Went up at the 6?
Do we need a motion, Mr. Chairman, in terms of,
No, because we're just going through,
Sure.
we don't need a motion for this, do we?
No, just,
Oh,
is it
okay.
Just
number 5
consensus.
or 6?
all right.
Dan, you're asking now, do we want to keep it at 5 or do we want to change it to 6?
I think, wasn't the number 5 or 6 thrown around, so
Right.
I don't think we put 5 or 6 in the verbiage, I think we need.
No, but
I know.
I'm saying, you're saying, right now, we should decide, is it going to be 5 or 6?
Well, Bill wants to make the revisions, and we want to get this so that we can,
Sure.
so, I mean, we can make it right now and make a decision if you want to. We
I'm
can.
fine with either 5 or 6. How does the rest of the board?
I'm fine
I'm
either
fine
way.
with 5.
Mr. Clark, you're not in favor of 6?
No, I'm going with 5.
You're
My
going with
preference would be
5.
the 5.
Okay, since it doesn't matter to me and it doesn't matter to you, Bill, what do you think?
5 works for me.
All right, I guess we're going to go with 5 because then it'll be unanimous.
No, works for me.
Okay.
And what we've done actually is we defined something that was left to interpretation, or at least open to discussion in the past.
Yep, agreed. Do we want to attack the next items that are in the text?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I know it's probably out of order, but I wondered if we might go back to the very beginning, if you will. I noted in the, as has been mentioned a number of times, Dudley is now a complete community, and in the sample that planner had given us of the folks in the Pioneer Valley, let me find that if I may. They make mention under their purpose, if you will, under Section 1, Authority and Purpose. Under their purpose, they indicate to the fullest extent reasonable and practical, all subdivisions shall be designed and constructed to incorporate the most recent design standards, best practices, policies, and design elements of complete streets. We don't have in our rules and regulations any reference to complete streets, although it has been approved by this board and subsequently approved by the Board of Selectmen. I think at some point we need to get that verbiage in there, and I think at the very beginning is probably the best place to do it.
Yep, agreed.
Yes.
That's a good point. I can add that to the purpose section.
So that would read the Dudley best complete streets
Right.
policy.
The latest addition to the modifications are in tab D, beginning with provision of performance guarantee, and taking it up to section 24, street acceptance plan. So this will be all of these sort of administrative provisions regarding what kind of performance guarantee you want to require and how you handle reductions and final sign-offs of the subdivision. So-
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for interrupting, but it seems that we have a reoccurring theme here in that individuals we're dealing with decide when and if they want to communicate, and very often they decide not to communicate at times when we think it most appropriate that they do communicate. And we're talking here about provision performance guarantees and performance, and the word guarantee come to light here. Somehow, I think we need to find a way to get somehow just basic common courtesy in terms of communication. I don't know how we bake that into this. I don't know if there's verbiage.
You can't legislate morality, as I
Well,
said.
you can't, but to some extent you can try to induce it, if you will, or encourage it, or make it a requirement, I think, in some respects. I mean, we have these projects that go on for not years, but decades. And again, these guys come and go in terms of they'll talk to you, they'll email you, they'll text you, they'll write you, and then months or even longer at a time, they're not there. Somehow there has to be something in this that ensures that there is a level of communication that is at least indication of a cooperation and willingness to work with the town. And that seems to be absent right now.
I just don't see how you can enforce that.
That's what I
If I'm
exactly.
a developer and I don't like something, I can pretty much ignore you until you drag me into court.
Or until you need something.
Right, exactly, right.
Well,
right.
we do have in the rules and regulations, there are mentions of fines that apply. And in some cases, I think in terms of a stoppage, was it $100 a day or something to that effect, in terms of a work stoppage? I don't know, has any town that we know of, has anybody else encountered this problem? And has somebody already invented a wheel and we just need to find that?
Well, what a lot of towns do is when a subdivision is ready to expire, they require the developer to come in and ask for an extension. Usually that's on an annual basis. So if we implement that kind of an approach, at least yearly someone would have to come in and discuss what's going on with development and what progress they're making.
Okay, at least that gets them in front of us anyway, as opposed to this anonymous.
We haven't had trouble when, for example, we had Rocky Hill Estates, we had
Right.
the developer's daughter come in and talk to us.
Mhm.
We invited her, and, they were happy to do it, so.
I don't recall that
Most-
as being a very fruitful discussion, so.
It may not have been,
Well-
but at least there was an attempt in terms of some communication, whereas on the other hand, we have this Mr. Haney, who just doesn't open his mail, doesn't read his text. I don't know what he does. He's just decided that anything that comes in with a Dudley letterhead is in the wastebasket, the circulating file, apparently.
So whenever a plan is approved, they always have a certain amount of time to complete all the work.
Mhm.
And that's usually 2 years?
It's usually 2. I'm suggesting later on that we maybe go to 3, but
Right. And then after that 2 years, they have to come in for an offer and file for an extension.
yes.
And that's on an annual basis, pretty much. Or can that be also 2 years?
It would be up to the board,
Be up to the board.
right?
And the planning board makes that decision.
Yes.
Okay, because as long as I've been on the board, almost 4 years now, no one's ever come before us and asked for an extension of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
So,
No.
yeah, technically then, without an extension, their plan would have expired.
Yeah, so I can't recall any extensions being requested in any way, shape, or form.
All right, so not to pick on Pierpont Estates, but that was a development we talked about that was started a long time ago, and
Mhm.
then the housing market crashed, so, you know, he stopped, and then
Mhm.
restarted. And you're telling me that he never came before and asked for an extension on that subdivision?
I don't recall it.
Not since I've been here. I mean, he's been in several times.
I know, I've seen him
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
here asking for lot releases, but I'm
So it's a
I'm
kind of a
just kind of
paperwork
floored by this
exercise.
revelation.
Mhm. So I think we could get, you know, more rigorous about that requirement and require a formal extension and sign off by the planning board on an annual basis, just to make
There you
sure
go,
that.
put a fine on that. You don't come before the board and request an extension,
Well, in theory, if they don't request the extension and their period is over, when they ask for a lot release, the answer
They
is
get
no, you
nothing,
don't have, your time is out.
and we make them start the process all over again.
I don't know, do we start from the beginning again? Do they have to go for a new approval then, or how would that work? If they're,
So on page 24, section 13,
24?
yes. Says, construction of all required improvements shall be completed within 2 years of the date of recordation. Subdivider may request an extension to the 2-year period in which the required improvements must be constructed. The request must be submitted in writing to the planning board, stating what further time period to complete the required improvements is required and the reasons why an extension is requested. The planning board may grant an extension of not more than 1 year. More than one extension may be granted.
Excuse me, Bill, I guess section 24, street acceptance plan?
No,
page 24.
Page 24.
Section 13.
I'm
Section
sorry.
13.
Construction of all required improvements shall be completed within 2 years.
24, time
Date
period
of record-
extension.
Okay. A subdivider may request.
2 years of the date.
And then on the top of
Must be
page,
submitted in writing to the planning board.
I mean, I think we just have.
So
we've
he
been-
can't even come before the planning board and ask for it. He's supposed to submit it in writing. It says must be submitted in writing.
Right. So that's our current regulation. I guess we've been lax in terms of following it, but
I guess so.
I think we could
Oh gee,
certainly.
who's gonna give him the bad news next time he comes in?
then
Well,
on-
this isn't applicable in terms of our issue with Eisenhower, right? I mean, he's already
well-
done.
Well, technically, you know, we could. They haven't been accepted yet. The street hasn't been accepted, so he's still subject to, but even if you withdraw your approval, I mean, it's kind
It's
of
fully
after
built
the
out.
fact.
Right?
What's that?
Fully built.
Eisenhower's fully built out.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help us there.
Right.
Yeah, we could say,
He's-
all right, yeah.
Right,
your
he's built all his
subdivision-
lots,
But
right.
yeah, that
Subdivision is expired. He's gonna be like, I don't care.
ship has sailed. Yeah.
Yeah, I got my money.
Well,
Bye.
does it help us?
I think it does going forward.
Because on the top of page 25, it reads, failure to complete all improvements as required by these rules and regulations within the time allotted shall cause the planning board to draw upon the financial surety in order to complete said improvements. So instead of waiting 10 years for somebody to
Ah, yeah.
To do it sooner.
complete the street of their own free will and accord, we can just basically take the money and have the street completed
Okay.
in a timely fashion.
Good.
I think a big problem in the past, though, was not enough funds available to even do anything.
Well, that's the 20 years later, you know, what they put away 20 years ago doesn't cover what it's gonna cost 20 years down the road, so, you know, that's part of the dilemma, I think.
I
we're
mean, that's what
suffering here.
happened with Misty Meadows. It was never finished, and there wasn't enough
Exactly.
security left to finish the work.
And if they come before the board and request an extension in writing, doesn't mean we have to grant it,
Right.
correct?
There'd be a law.
I guess it would be hard to deny. I mean, you'd have to have pretty good reason not to. But technically, you're correct. You don't have to approve it if you don't think it's appropriate.
Well, I'm just, all right.
I mean, generally, you want the developers to finish the work, right? It's
Right.
not desirable for the town to have to step in and do the work.
All right.
But if they're not doing it, then you have that recourse.
Very good.
Instead of dragging, the reason why I was saying that wasn't, in a case where, instead of dragging it out, just say, hey, look, you've been working at this thing for umpteen years. Still no sign that this is gonna be resolved.
That's it.
So enough is enough.
Yeah.
We're just gonna take whatever's left in the account. And your subdivision is done. No more lot releases.
I think that's a reasonable approach, frankly. Otherwise, it seems that the intent is just to ignore, and eventually they figure that, you'll go away, or the town will go away and not bother them any longer. And that's not the intent of any of these rules and regulations as I read them, and these guys are playing footloose and fancy free with their interpretation of it. There's got to be some enforcement. Without that, none of this means anything, really.
So, Dan, looking at the agenda, the current subdivisions we're always reviewing, do you recall any of those coming in? Or do we have any letters requesting, any of them requesting extensions?
Not that I've seen, I haven't gone looking for them. So maybe in the past, they have come in.
I don't recall any extensions being asked for. Some of these subdivisions have already been completed, or others that I'm aware of.
Well, I mean, like
Oh, that-
Tobin's completed and just being waited to be accepted as a town.
Right.
Right, okay.
Lions has started. Country
Lions
View
is
is
brand
basic.
new.
Yep, Country Estates is basically all finished. I think on Piasta, there are empty lots, but I think all those lots have been purchased. So I don't think there's anything more that's available for sale or
I
for
think that's
development in
correct,
there. Rocky Hill, there are still
2 or 3
six,
lots
10,
left.
okay,
Right.
2 or 3 lots. And then Pierpont, he's probably still got 20 left to go?
Yeah,
All right. So it's really Pierpont and,
There's already an agreement in place with Rocky Hill, so the only one this is really good for now would be Pierpont and Lions, correct?
and Lions hasn't met, come up
Yeah,
to
they
the
hadn't
2
started.
years.
Right,
so-
that's the newest.
It's only
So in
been,
theory, in 2
6
or 3
months.
years, if he's not finished for whatever reason, then yes, we would see the developer in front of us for asking for an extension.
okay.
so if you like, I could
Is
get in
that
touch
something we
with,
should, is that something that where would you notify the developer of this change or this requirement? Would
Well-
it be like now, oh, by the way,
Mhm.
Maybe that's the best thing. Maybe, I mean, I don't think any of us are opposed to granting an extension.
No,
no, it's just these all get to the point where something goes bad at the end, they have all their lot releases and they don't want nothing to do with anything after. And
Mhm.
you got poor Bill chasing these guys and they're just ignoring them. And
yeah, it's a fruitless,
And the people that live up there, if something goes wrong with that septic, it's gonna be bad news.
So if you like, I think the only one, Dan, as you mentioned, is Pierpont. I could ask the developer to submit an extension request so that we could,
So you said there was already an agreement with Rocky Hill?
They have an agreement for as the lot releases are concerned, right?
we
Rocky
did,
Hill?
excuse me?
Doesn't Rocky Hill have an agreement with the town as far as lot releases are concerned?
Yes, we did one last week or
Yep.
2 weeks ago. They have a couple more lots of, still to develop on Bona Drive.
Right,
So I'm not familiar with the whole entire agreement. Does that agreement preclude us asking for them to
Yeah,
extend?
I
or-
don't know.
Okay.
There was a legal agreement.
Yeah, I don't know the
Um,
details there.
I'll have to check.
They're going to come before us eventually and request 2 more lot releases.
Yes.
Okay.
at some point,
And when they come before us to request those 2 lot releases, technically they'll be coming before us to request 2 lot releases and an expired subdivision, correct?
As Dan mentioned, I'd have to check, that consent agreement.
That's something I definitely would want to know before I would vote to approve lot releases on any development.
Okay.
just one last question regarding that. There's no cost to the developer to ask for this extension, is there?
No.
No, so
No.
then why not just do it correctly?
Mhm.
All right.
So you could, just have them, I could just have them submit an email or a letter if you wanted them to come in and talk about it, I could,
I don't even think we need that. It's in black and white. Submit the request in writing. Would an email suffice, do you think, Dan, or do you think that's?
Yeah, I think that, just, if we were to approve a subdivision tomorrow, and they had 3 years, I think it would just be a town courtesy after 2.5 years to just remind the developer in some way, shape, or form. If that's an email, a phone call, or,
Right.
I think that would just be a courtesy, just to give them a heads up that, hey, this is coming
Right.
on, at
Okay.
you.
But what I was saying, what I meant was, as far as them formally requesting in writing this is written, this rule was probably written before email became a legal
Right.
form of,
yes.
so, an
Yeah.
email from the developer requesting extension.
Yeah, as long as they, I think they have to not only request the extension, but give a reason for it. There's a
Right.
couple other stipulations in there,
Okay.
as long as all that's taken care of. If it's in an email or a personal letter, I don't think it really
I would
matters.
add perhaps that maybe we'd invite them to a meeting of the board so that they could present the request at their convenience if they thought it was,
That would be good for an
important enough to
update,
them.
just for general
Yeah.
communication.
Right,
I think, and that would be we probably wouldn't have to do that with everybody. I mean, I think, like Pierpont, we're all well aware of what's going on there. You're
Right.
just here for lot releases. You don't need to drag him back here and talk to us just to ask for a thing that he can do in writing. So, yeah, I would say, I guess, if you could reach out, Bill, and say, oops, our bad, we kinda got this little housekeeping issue here we kinda missed. If you don't mind, just ask for a formal extension.
Okay.
even if you do mind.
Because we just went through that whole thing with zoning about getting the extension on that.
It ain't like it's a hold-up thing for them, though. It's just a simple email.
Yeah, right.
On page 24, just above the beginning of section 13, we're talking about financial sureties. Right now, we have, is 20% right now, or is that is that the point of discussion, if it's too high or
We
not?
don't specify a percentage for inflation.
Okay, so there isn't any percentage of what the cost adjusted for the inflation and for a safety factor should be. So there's a recommendation of 20%. Does the board feel that's too high, or is that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's more than appropriate. I think that's a good number. Again, as we've noted a couple of times over, these developments take forever, and you can't, what can you bake in there in terms of an inflation factor? All you know is that it's going to go up, and if these things are taking 10 to 20 years, as it seems is the case, and 20% is in there, and it may not be enough.
Just as an item to note, in theory, if my 3 years is over, and I'm going to ask everybody or the planning board for an extension, some way, shape, or form, there should be an estimate of the work left to continue, and then the surety should come up. So if the board feels at that point in time there's not enough surety in there, we can ask for more then.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So we could put the 20% in here now, but there's also a built-in safety factor with the approval of any extension that would also give us leeway to adjust the percentage as we see fit, or as the estimate comes out. So I feel that 20 is a little high. I was feeling that maybe, a 10 or 15 is better suited, just for the simple fact that we're given these approvals for 3 years, and then after that, we have to come back for review. But I'm open. If the board feels otherwise, I'm in agreement.
It's a lot if you have, say, $400,000 left, work left to do. 20% is
80.
is 80,000.
Yeah.
So that you have to up the security then to 480,000.
Yeah, I think a 20% is good, is a good number if we're giving these approvals for 10 years, when we're not sure how the inflation is gonna be. But if we're given an approval for 2/3 years, that comes up in one of the other items, then I think that we could,
I think also,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, doesn't it kind of move things along a little bit faster in terms of if you get that 20% in there, they want to get things to completion a little quicker than if it were 5 or 10%, let's say?
there's no doubt, but the only thing is that the one thing that's not in the developer's control is the market.
True.
Who's buying the houses.
True.
And if for some reason it's a slow market and he can't sell those houses as quickly as he wants to, that's just a lot of, you need some financial oomph behind you to carry that 20%.
I think it's interesting that it says it's, add as an inflation factor. So it's
And
almost as if
infl-
like they're talking about looking at the inflation rate, how
Right.
much inflation do we see over 3 years? But I tend to think that we should be looking at it more from a point of actual inflation in the cost of construction, which
Right.
I think is different and can sometimes easily outpace.
Right.
You know, we get into a booming market, and all of a sudden, you know, the sheet of plywood that was $15 at Home Depot 3 years ago, all of a sudden, because of whatever factor, it's 45.
Right.
You know,
So, you know, the way it works is, you know, Jeff Walsh prepares an estimate of what it would take for the town to finish a subdivision if the developer went into default. So we could add that 20% to his estimate, so that if, for example, he said it's $100,000 to finish the subdivision, at the 20% inflation factor, then he owes $120,000 to the town. So if, you know, that would carry forward for a number of years, you know, if nothing happened, and eventually, say, 5 years later, the town decided to take it over, then at least you'd have, you know, that extra 20% cushion to make sure you had enough money to finish the job.
There's always a possibility that we might have 100,000 at the very beginning, but then he's done some work, requests to have that surety reduced. Now we're reducing it to 40,000, and the 20% of that is only 8 grand. So there's, maybe the 20% is a good number.
I'm comfortable with the 20%.
Yeah. The
Steve,
wor-
you guys, Richard, Steve, you guys
Yeah,
are comfortable with
I
20?
think I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with that. I think the worst-case scenario is that Misty Meadows issue, however that happened to play out in terms of, obviously, the guy went bankrupt as we understand it, but you know, whatever the circumstances were prior to that bankruptcy, something was amiss, and we didn't catch that.
Same page, item 13. Construction of all required, first sentence, construction of all required improvements shall be completed within 2 years of the date of recordation. But the comment is 3 years are probably more realistic. I mean, 2 years, you gotta figure,
I mean, I made that comment
Yep.
because it doesn't seem like 2 years is adequate to actually
some streets
complete
you
a
could use,
subdivision.
you could use almost a year to finish the street, depending on lot release times and how long it is, weather.
Yeah, right. You get a real
I
bad-
think 3 years is a good idea to add to that.
Okay,
Everybody else in agreement with that?
sure,
okay.
seems reasonable.
And then the planning board may grant an extension of not more than 1 year. So we may grant one. More than 1 year extension may also be granted. So I think I like that. That leaves it open for a little bit. We
Yeah.
can leave it, we can give another 3-year extension, we can give it 2, we can give a 1. That's kind of at our discretion there. I think that's a good idea.
The way I'm interpreting that is it would be a 1-year extension, but you could do it more than once. You
Right.
could-
Yep.
It'd be like a annual
Mhm.
Yeah,
extension for a year.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Gotta
Yes,
come
that
back every year and ask
Right.
again, which is what we want,
Mhm.
because, like you
The-
said, that opens
the
up
communication,
of-
facilitate
Yeah,
the communication.
I interpreted it wrong. You're right, Bill.
Right.
Yep.
I just wanted to
Yep.
make sure. Yeah, I really like the 1 year. Then we're not 10 years down the road and
Yeah,
the
wondering
road's
why.
crumbled and the developer's long gone and.
Page 25, we have the pre-construction conference. As the comment is, these are standard practice now. I don't think there's anything to discuss there. I think the rest of the comments are more administrative in nature. The only comment I would have is, on page 32, last page, the last sentence pretty much just above the section 24. The file shall meet the standards as provided in appendix. Is that a new appendix we're gonna, put into the system? Or is that just needs to be looked up?
I'm sorry, where are you then?
Page 32,
Mm-hmm.
the last sentence, so it's just above section 24, the very
right.
last sentence.
Right, I haven't drafted that yet, so,
Okay,
um,
we didn't get that far yet.
Oh, that's just the electronic version of,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, so
Okay,
you're leaving that as a placeholder because you plan on drafting?
Yes.
this
Understood,
appendix that's
understood.
gonna
right,
come
so there'll be
later.
standards for
all
how
right.
they have to format their submission.
Looks good. Is that it?
Well, the next meeting, I think we'll get into sort of the fun stuff, and that's, you know, the street standards and how you,
Okay.
you know, what
We
kind
do
of
like that
design you
stuff.
want to encourage in town. With the complete streets, I think will be important.
At some
Part
point,
of
do
that
we get
discussion.
into usage tables and things like that?
And what?
Usage tables, permitted use tables?
No, that's zoning. So I think here we talk about street widths, you know, how many, do you want sidewalks on both sides?
Yeah, you
Street
just lied
lights
to me, you
and
said it was
grass,
fun.
Do you need to have just one size fits all kind of thing, or, so?
I'm
Okay,
sorry, I missed
all
that.
right.
Was that the one-liner of the night over there?
Yeah, no, the only reason I was thinking about permitted use tables was because of, you know, we had a couple of things come up.
I mean, we can certainly,
Parking lots for leasing,
Yeah.
self-storage facilities, you know. You get a self-storage facility that exists in town, there was a question of, well, how did that happen if, you know, but now it's like, well, it's been there so long, it's gonna be there.
Yeah.
But it's like, at some point, someone may come into town and wanna do a and apparently there's good money in these facilities from what I understand. So, that's.
we can certainly, you know, undertake a zoning review before town meeting, and if you have any suggestions, for example, to the use table, we could propose amendments to town meeting. It's always good to do that every once in a while, and make sure we're up to date with latest practices.
If only we knew
Was it-
somebody on zoning.
Yeah, wasn't Nelson, going through the zoning because he had some questions, comments, and concerns about some
Right, I
stuff
think-
in there, and he was trying to get that done? Some rewording, I
Right, he
guess?
deals with this on a daily basis, so I'm sure he has lots of
Yeah,
questions about interpretation of the bylaw, which make it difficult for him.
'cause a lot of it's really vague, I mean,
So, does the zoning board traditionally bring those
No,
up at town meeting, or?
traditionally, it's the planning board.
Okay,
You're basically the keeper of the zoning bylaw.
Wow.
right, okay. So
So-
we could discuss that at a later
So
date.
if you thought it was worthwhile, we could suggest hiring a consultant to do an overhaul of the bylaw, or at least, you
When
know.
would they last have been revised or considered?
Well, I think it's been done in-house.
It's been
sort
done
of On a
in-house?
regular basis.
On a regular basis?
Right. Every year, there seems to be a couple of amendments.
Right, but nothing comprehensive and nothing that's comparative in terms of what other towns and cities and
Correct, right.
consistency with the general law and.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so maybe time has come.
Yeah. Because I'm sure there are some examples I'm not thinking of right now of
Mhm.
businesses that might come into town and want to open up, and that.
10 years ago, who would have thought of cannabis, you know?
Well, there you go, yeah, right.
And what's coming tomorrow?
At least that's in there.
What's that?
That's in there, though.
Yeah, that's in there now, yeah.
We know where we're allowing that.
Well, one only, apparently.
Well, that remains to be seen.
All right, the next item, discussion of filling the vacancy on the board. I think we've reached out to 2 individuals so far, struck out twice.
Yes.
Who were the two? I heard about one.
Russ Giglio, who is the current associate member,
Oh, yeah, right.
said he would be willing to continue as associate member, and I explained to him that we have asked him to participate in the special permit for the DMA marijuana facility, so we have 5 voting members.
Okay.
But he did not want to be a full-time member of the board.
Oh, okay.
And then we'd asked Mark Mazziotti, who was a former planning board member, and he said he's just too busy with other town commitments to devote sufficient time to the planning board. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions for other former members who could make a short-term commitment, say for, 6 months until the election, who could come in and hit the ground running because they've already got the experience of working on a board, and you wouldn't have to train somebody for a couple of months and then have to take on somebody new at the election. So I thought it just as a short-term measure, trying to bring back somebody who had been on the board before would be a good way to go.
Yeah, I think Guy Horn's name came up
Mm-hmm.
when I first was appointed to the board and then got elected. Guy was on the board. He was the chairman for a couple of years. Incredibly knowledgeable. He'd been a member of the planning board for years. I know that he elected not to run for re-election 2.5 years ago. But if it's a 6-month appointment, maybe he would have time and be willing to help
Mhm.
out. I mean,
Mhm.
if the board is okay with that, that'd be that's one person that comes immediately to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I have no objection.
That sounds, who or how do we make the approach then?
I can ask if you like.
Flowers and candy? I don't know.
Halloween coming.
Is there anybody else? If I go to Dan Guy first and he declines, is there anybody else you'd like to ask?
I can't think of anybody else.
I don't know of any other previous,
Marcia
so-
Wagner, I believe, is still in town. Was a member of the planning board at one point. I don't know whether she'd have any interest in that. I'm just throwing out a name as I recall her having been on in the past. I don't, maybe Michelle would know. The town, I believe on the website, had lists of openings as
Yep.
far as boards and commissions are concerned. Is that still there?
Yes, it is.
And is the vacancy on the planning board among those listed?
Yes. I thought I saw it on the video on channel 190, whatever the heck it is on
194?
cable.
Oh, yeah, we put it up there.
All right,
I have not put it out like on the sign outside.
okay.
I could put it out there too, or I could actually put it on the website.
Okay, and we are of the opinion that it is the selectmen do have the authority to appoint someone.
Correct.
And would that be based perhaps on a recommendation from the existing planning board members?
Yes, that would,
That's
I
what we're
would think
talking
that they'd
about now,
want
right?
that.
We're talking about, we
Right.
I
make
would
the
think that they want
recommendation
your,
for Guy, for
Recommendation.
instance.
Yep.
And then we make, if he says yes, we make the recommendation to the selectmen, and the selectmen hopefully approve it. And what, the person you referenced, Rich, is that someone that you know well enough that you might be able to ask if she still has an interest?
I could ask.
Marcia? I know she's,
I think she's sometime in
For a
Florida
while,
and
winter.
sometimes in the, in this, I'm not, believe me, I don't know the specifics, but I had the thought that some part of her year was in Florida.
yes, it is. Well, it
Yeah.
was, I don't know now.
Well, and I'm thinking that if that were the case, then this is probably the part of the year that she would be in Florida or thinking about
Oh,
going
okay.
that way. Typically, people are, I mean, I guess it's 100 and something degrees down there now, but I guess
So-
people are,
Right, it's got to be somebody who's here year-round.
yeah, that might be a limitation. I could see if I could find that, ask the question.
Yeah, she was in Florida for a while.
I'm sorry?
She was down in Florida.
She was.
I'm not
yeah.
sure if she's still going
I
there.
know she's been up here recently, but again, this is the time of year when people are getting the itch to go that way, and
So I will reach out to Guy, see whether he's interested.
And I would say that if he says that he's not interested, then I think we have to maybe not necessarily limit ourselves to people who have previous experience. We might have to just,
Well, the other
with
thought is
another
just,
new
that-
board member, that somebody who's brand new to it, you know how horrible that can be.
I mean, you could also say it's a 4-member board if you wanted to. You don't have to fill that seat. Because we have the associate member who can act on the special permit application.
all right. Now, with the, what is it, DMA coming up?
Yep.
I believe that, from what I understood at the last selectmen's meeting, that their intent is to appear before this board on the 18th.
Yes.
So that would be special permit. So we would invite Mr. Giglio to be with us that evening, I
Yes.
assume?
Yes.
Planner's plate. Anything special for us?
Getting back to the Complete Streets program, we heard from Mass DOT. They sent us a contract form to hire a consultant to prepare the prioritization plan, which is Tier 2 of the 3-tier process. We are working with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission to prepare that prioritization plan on behalf of the town. And I think the planning board would be the vehicle that would oversee that process, since you are the Complete Streets Committee. So once that contract is buttoned up, CMRPC would begin that process. I can send you the scope of work for that CMRPC will work on. It's kind of a boilerplate for the program, but it does specify Dudley and what they would be doing for the town. So I'll send that to you, and then I would assume once they get underway in a couple of weeks or months, however long it takes when they have that process underway, they'll come before the board and talk about some of their work and ask for your input. Richard mentioned that we have a special permit for the marijuana facility at 35 Chase Avenue. I have gotten the application, and I've got copies of the site plan for the board, so you can take this with you this evening and start to take a look at it if you like. This is the paper copy of the application. It's, a lot of material here. I think if you want paper copies of this, we can make a copy and you can start to review it. Or if you'd like digital copies, I can send you the email of this. This contains, all the information that's required in the bylaw. It has a traffic study. It has a odor mitigation plan. It has a description of the project, and it contains the licenses that have been issued by the Cannabis Control Commission. So all of that material that's required for the application, I can send this to you so that when the hearing opens on the 18th, you'll be well informed. So who would like a paper copy and who would like a digital copy?
I prefer the old-fashioned paper
Okay.
copy, if I may.
I'm good digital.
How many pages is it?
A few hundred?
150.
150, digital, fine.
Okay.
Digital, yeah.
Okay.
I'm the old geezer here, right? They did make presentation before the selectmen at the last meeting, and there's a lot on the table here. A lot of money, potentially a lot of jobs, very significant impact in terms of the local economy, potentially. And one of the things that they did mention is the spin-off effect in terms of local merchants and a hiring of local vendors and suppliers
Yeah.
and contractors. and-
Builder.
Convenience store in the area, you gotta get your munchies.
So on the site plan that I just handed out, they're really not proposing any changes to the site. They're using it sort of as it exists today. I'm asking Michelle to send a copy of that up to Jeff Walsh so that he can start his peer review. I don't know whether he'll have his findings in time for the public hearing, but it would be nice to get his comments as soon as possible. The board could also, as you go through, this material, think about if you want to have peer reviews of other aspects of the project. For example, we can hire a traffic consultant to review the traffic study. We could have an odor consultant review the odor plan. I think the police chief has already been in touch with them regarding the security plan. So I don't think we need to have an outside review of that. But if there's any other consultants that you think would be important, we can certainly contact consultants and get estimates for their services.
Does this project fall under the requirement of filing a developmental impact study?
No, it's not a subdivision. It's a special
But we
permit.
could
it's not-
request that such information from them as opposed to doing it ourselves,
The
right?
marijuana bylaw, as it exists, does require a number of plans and studies to be submitted,
Yep.
which they've done already, so we have much of that covered already.
Okay.
Is this going before conservation yet?
I don't think they filed yet, I don't know for sure. I'm assuming-
how close this parking lot is to the river.
Yeah, it's like right there,
So,
in the back, if you go around the back. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
so brief summary of next week, of next meeting, what we're gonna be doing with this. We're gonna open a public meeting, we're gonna have the team here, they're gonna present, we're gonna open a public hearing,
Yes,
comments from the public,
public is invited, of course.
Yep. and this will be the only public hearing, or we'll
Well, it
have a
can be
second?
continued as often as necessary. I would assume we would go over a couple of meetings.
Will this be Zoom?
Good question. I think we probably should make it that way.
So if
Because
this is going over multiple meetings, at what point do we make the decision that we're gonna cut off the comments or whatever here and carry on to the next meeting?
Well, it depends what issues come up. For example, if you think that peer review of the traffic study would be important, then we'd wait for that consultant to do the analysis and come back with the findings, and there might be some mitigation that they would recommend, and in which case, we'd have a discussion with the developer on that. So it could continue for a couple of meetings.
So if we have 55 people in here, and everybody wants to comment, and going back and forth, be it Zoom or me, or however, we just let it go until 10 o'clock, and then we just stop?
Sure.
Or do we just say, hey, after 20, we're going to the next time, come back then?
Well, it's obviously your call, but I think we want to give everybody a chance to present their opinions on this project and take everybody's comments into account. And however long that takes, that's what it is.
So based with our restrictions, are we gonna be having people in here, or is this gonna be, because, I mean, Zoom is a little bit different than having someone sit right there and talk to us.
Well, we would sort of do it the way we did the last meeting that we had.
We didn't have any public input on that one, did we?
We did not,
No.
but for people that don't want to come to a meeting because maybe they have a compromised health issue, they would want to participate by Zoom, I think.
But we had a good turnout at the town meeting.
Yep.
So I just think that if people hold this issue dear, I don't know what our limitation is to have people in here. If it's a first come, first serve with the speaker outside, or
Yeah,
how
we
we
have-
do this, but
25.
Overflow rooms here.
Okay.
45 or 25?
25, she said.
25.
If we suspend at 10 o'clock,
Well, we have to, because that's our curfew,
no.
right?
I'm not questioning that, but I'm
We
saying,
do-
if we have to suspend at 10 o'clock because people still want to speak and we just run out of time, do we have to wait till the next scheduled meeting?
Well, you
Revisit this and have
you
it
would
come back?
reschedule the hearing to a date that you decide
Another date,
is reasonable.
Okay, but does that have to be posted again?
yeah.
Michelle's shaking her head no, I see a
It
reflection.
wouldn't have to be posted? Second
The-
You
continuation
have a
up?
public hearing, you can adjourn that public hearing into another time, and then open it then. You don't have to close it and then.
No, we don't,
close
close it. I
it.
just wasn't sure if we let the public know then, so let them
Yes.
know that the meeting was adjourned due to length, and then we're gonna pick up the topic at that point in time.
Correct,
Could we pick it up the very next week?
yeah.
Yeah, whenever you want to.
We still have 48-hour posting
Yes.
Well, yeah,
requirement, yeah.
absolutely.
I just hate for it to like drag on where it's like, we adjourn, they don't speak about it, and then they have to wait till our next scheduled meeting, which might not be, if we just dropped a couple meetings, might end up being like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's December before they can
Just-
come back and.
On a weekly basis, it's difficult because there's other things that have to be juggled in personal lives. So like, I can't come every Wednesday. I know when the planning board meetings are, and I make arrangements for babysitting, for girlfriend working, et cetera, et cetera.
All right.
So it's difficult to make every single week.
Right,
Rich is
no,
really-
that's fine.
Eyeballing your seat anyways, I think he would love to as vice chair.
Usually,
Right in there, public
This
hearing.
plexiglass is affecting your eyesight, Mr. Wetruba.
usually between meetings, work has to take place. The developer has to revise plans, or the consultant has to do additional work, so.
The following week is very problematic,
So
because
2
that's
weeks.
Thanksgiving, that'll be the
Right.
18th
Oh, is
or
it?
the 25th.
So 2 weeks
I
is
mean,
a
if we meet
reasonable
on the
time.
18th, the following week would be
I'm not gonna
Thanksgiving,
be
I don't
here
think
if it's
anybody
the day
would
before
have.
Thanksgiving.
It's all theoretical right now. I was just kind of getting an
All
idea
right.
of the process
I was
here.
just thinking out loud, and I wasn't just specifically thinking about necessarily this public hearing, but the other one that we've got coming, which is gonna be the mill over, the Stevenson complex. That's another one where we might end up
Right.
having quite a turnout.
There's definitely potential for significant public interest in both the projects, and both, again, are very significant in terms of the town. And I think the selectmen have made that known to everyone. So this would be an opportunity for the public to involve themselves should they choose to do so.
Anything else, planner's plate?
The other thing that I would mention is last week, we had the Jericho Brandon Infrastructure Plan presentation of preliminary findings. It was held in this room. We did a combination, sort of a hybrid, in-person and public comment from home. I don't think anybody from home participated, but we had a couple of residents in the neighborhood come and offer comments. That plan is looking at surface and subsurface infrastructure, so sidewalks, streets, curbs, as well as water, sewer, drainage issues. Ty and Bond is doing that work. They have done a great deal of analysis of existing infrastructure. I have maps of their findings in my office. If anybody would like to come in and look at them, let me know, and be happy to share that information with you. So they'll be back again with the final report in another public meeting, presenting their findings. The intent of that study is to use it to apply for funding to make improvements for infrastructure in that neighborhood. And so that could be community development block grants, complete streets, mass works grants, things of that sort. So it should be a very useful tool for the town to have to move forward with improving the infrastructure in those neighborhoods.
So that, in what neighborhoods again specifically?
The Jericho and Brandon?
Okay, so Brandon, so we're getting close to the DMS project in terms of that general neighborhood then, moving in that direction, so.
Right.
With the,
Right, the
issue
mill
in terms
was-
of the traffic possibly increasing,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like an appropriate
Right.
time to start looking into that
Sure.
aspect of, the infrastructure, certainly.
Anything else, planner's plate?
No, that's it.
Planning board comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I was remiss last meeting in not mentioning our debt of gratitude to Mr. Perrin, his service. He certainly brought some technical knowledge to the table that I think we will unfortunately be lacking going forward. I know Mr. Wetruba's a quick study, and I suspect he's doing his homework even as I speak. So we'll probably be covered to that regard, but Mr. Perrin was a valued member of this board, and we wish him well in his endeavors down in Virginia.
Here, here. Anything else? All right, this is something I'm loath to bring up right now because it's getting late, but we're busy next meeting. We've been going over a couple items that we're trying to clean up, be it regulations and developers not submitting for extensions, et cetera, et cetera. One of the items that I was just thinking about is that, just a question more or less, is how do we choose our consultants? And when do those consultants come up for any kind of review or renewal for contract? I'm not sure if this is under our jurisdiction or not, if this all goes through town administrator.
Well, I think we use Graves Engineering for the planning board peer reviews. So I think that's under your control. If you are satisfied with them, I don't think you need to do anything. If you'd like to open it up for competition, that's
No, I'm more than
also fine.
satisfied with them. It doesn't have that much, anything to do with them. It was just, again, the process. I've been on the board for 4 years and
Mm-hmm.
they're here, they're helping us, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that process work? When do rates get adjusted, if at all? Is there a contract? It's more just general information that
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind having. I don't know how the board feels about it.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's very timely, and that Mr. Scanlon has mentioned a couple of other projects in town, and hiring outside consultants or resources. So somewhere along the way, the process is evolving, whether we're aware of it or how it's being done, it is happening. So maybe if we could acquaint ourselves with how that is administered and how those decisions are made, I think we'd all be the better off for it.
As someone who does not work in the construction trades and has no idea what these things are supposed to cost, I would like to know what the average cost of engineering that's paid by contractors outside of the town is in comparison to what we're paying. For all I know, we might be getting the market rate, we might be getting a deal, or we might be getting taken to the cleaners.
Right.
So,
The uncertainty.
They bill, when we get the invoices, they bill hourly, pretty much. So they have an hourly rate, I'm sure they've agreed with the town in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I don't know if that gets approved or not, or how it gets renewed, I don't know that. The rates look industry standard, I mean,
it does?
yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, then I guess I'll take your word
So, yeah.
for it, because you're somebody who works in the trade.
Just different
or would know
engineers,
better
different
than I would.
prices, but I mean, in general, they're not, it's not like we're paying
Okay.
twice or three times as much, they're there. It's less, this has less, my comments have less to do with Graves, because they've been doing a great job, they're always there for us. Just let's get to know the process, I mean,
And I wasn't implying that we were necessarily being taken to the cleaners. I was just saying, I don't know. That's why I was curious.
but we're a relatively young board, and we're
Right.
just kind of, some things we're learning as we go along, so this just came up as a thought, and it'd be good to have just the
Okay,
general
I'll
information.
Get some more information for you for the next
Hey,
meeting.
Thank you, sir. Are there any approval of consultants vouchers for us? Speaking of
We
which.
do have one. It's actually to the Telegram and Gazette for the legal ad for the zoning amendments. It's in tab G. So it's $252 for that, for the legal ad for the mill conversion overlay district and the amendment to the zoning map for industrial 130.
Just need one copy?
Yes.
Oh, Bill, was there a second page there?
Yeah, the vouchers, so we have the payment voucher, then their invoice.
Okay. I meant the second page that needed a signature.
Oh, no, no signature.
Just one on that, right?
That's it. Anything else we need to go over before adjourning?
That's all I have. Anything else?
I'm good. I'm ready.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Good night.